All right. Welcome, everybody, to the professional development series for the 2022-23 academic year. I am going to go ahead and enable the live transcription as well, so you can also follow along. So my name is Nick Matar. I am the Associate Director of Marketing and Communications at the Graduate School at Wayne State University. And this is my third year being involved with the professional development series of events. And it is my pleasure to welcome anybody that's new. And for those of you who have been to these events before, welcome back. Thank you for hanging out with us here on a Tuesday afternoon in sunny Midtown or wherever you are virtually. This is the first of many professional development events that we have scheduled for the academic year. Many of them are ready to go, planned and set for the rest of the fall semester. And I would highly recommend that you check out some of the other offerings that we have coming up throughout the rest of the year. They're all available at the grad school website, or at least the ones for the fall semester are at gradschool.wayne.edu. Couple other quick notes before I bring on our keynote speaker. This isn't supposed to be an interactive session. We're using the spotlight feature in Zoom. So, yes, we can't see you, but if you have, if you come off mute and you accidentally say something, we will be able to hear you. So please stay on mute throughout the presentation. There will be a Q&A session at the end where you will be encouraged to use Zoom to either raise your hand or to come off mute and ask a question. You can also use the chat function to ask a question as we go. We will be sure to address those at the end. And, the professional development series is something that I hold very near and dear to my heart at the graduate school. We really like putting on these virtual, and we will be returning to some in-person events this year as well. After the event's over, we're going to be sending out the video link to this, as well as a survey on the event. And so I encourage you to fill out the survey, share your thoughts and feedback. We do take all of that very seriously. And if you're not able to attend events in the future, be sure to subscribe to the graduate school channel on YouTube. We'll always be posting those events, generally within a day or two of them occurring. So, without further ado, I am going to welcome up Dean Dr. Amanda Bryant-Friedrich. She is going to lead our first session here. I guess you could call it a keynote per se. She's going to give an overview of restorative inclusive excellence, especially in graduate education, and how it relates to all of us here today. So Dr. Amanda, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me just fine. If you can't, let me know. Thank you. Welcome today to our professional development series. And today I am going to talk about restorative inclusive excellence. And this is not a concept that you would have heard of otherwise, actually, outside of Wayne State, because it is something that I developed with colleagues here at the university after returning to Wayne State after about 20 years of absence. I was here in my early part of my career as a lecturer and an adjunct faculty member. And after 20 years, I returned and I recognized that there were a lot of different things that had happened at Wayne State during my absence and a lot of things that had remained the same. And it also had a lot to do with my own experience in higher education that brought me to this. I think that graduate education is probably one of the most important drivers to social mobility. And I know that Wayne State is recognized for its role in social mobility. And in order for us to make sure that everyone has access to that mobility, we have to make sure that everyone has access to that education. And so that's what this concept is all about. And if you would just kind of bear with me, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to throw a monkey wrench a little bit into what Nick said, because I do want to actually ask you guys some questions and hear something from you during the time. So feel free to go off mute when I ask questions. And I hope Nick doesn't kill me after the fact for doing that. So let me see here if I can get my slides to advance. So what is restorative inclusive excellence? This is the first question. So we have heard people talk about inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We hear people put another letter on the end, and we have diversity, equity, inclusion, and respect, or justice, and things like that. And when we say it, we say DEI or DEIR or things like that. And it just then kind of makes the concept of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, kind of melt into this one overall way of thinking. Well, I am very purposeful in making sure that people recognize that it's not that way. Diversity is one piece, inclusion is a second piece, and then equity is another piece. And so we have to think about how those things actually work together. And the framework here, restorative inclusive excellence, does just that. It thinks about how those things actually work together. We talk about inclusive excellence. So inclusive excellence actually comes from the framework of organizational management. It is based in organizational management, and it talks about establishing hallmarks of excellence. And so when we talk about establishing hallmarks of excellence, what is it that we want to be good at? What is it that Wayne State is supposed to be good at? What is it that graduate education is supposed to be good at? So any type of organization that we think about, we want to think about what is excellence within that. And then we want to think about organizational effectiveness and how to achieve that excellence. Because you have to have an organizational foundation in order to achieve excellence. It can't be random, it can't be chaotic. You have to have an organization with a purpose. And integrated into everything there is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so when you think about that, we want to talk about then having diverse populations of people who are providing education, who are providing professional development. We want to have equitable access to that. We want everyone who has the ability and the desire to be able to get their hands on it. And when they arrive, we want them to feel like they belong there. And so that's what the entire concept is about, is organizing your processes, your structures, everything, so that everyone feels that they can be a part of that excellence. So what does equity mindedness have to do with that? So you'll see that there are three components: equity mindedness, inclusive excellence, and restorative justice. Equity mindedness is the part where it looks at the individual. And so it is a perspective or mode of thinking that allows for the recognition and attention to patterns of inequity in outcomes. And that's where you really want to think about it. Who is benefiting from this excellence? Who is able to participate in this excellence? And then if you see inequities in who is at the table, who is participating, then it is up to you as an individual to speak on that, to talk about it, to bring other people to the table to help you actually include other people. So, and that's when we look at the equitable access. What does it mean to be equitable? The last piece is restorative justice. And restorative justice is a very interesting concept. And it's one that is sometimes equated with just the criminal justice system. People think about restorative justice in criminal acts and people who have harmed a community. Harm is an operative word in restorative justice. Sometimes people push away from that because they don't ever want to feel that they have harmed anyone, nor do they want to feel like they have been harmed, because being harmed is something that is difficult for us to deal with. And so when we talk about restorative justice, we're trying to heal. We're trying to repair harm, and as a community, bringing all stakeholders together in that. So why do we talk about restorative justice? So I've had the opportunity to speak to David Karp, and he is the director of the University of San Diego Center for Restorative Justice. And in talking to him, it was very interesting. Bringing restorative justice to higher education is something that's relatively new in the context of faculty, in the context of structure. We've used restorative justice very often to talk about students, and when students actually do something at an institution that harms the community, and then we bring together folks to actually deal with that harm. But what about when the faculty or the president or the provost, what about when those individuals actually harm folks? So it is in his context, and this is his definition in his book, The Little Book of Restorative Justice for Colleges and Universities, it's a way to prevent or respond to harm. And that is very important because at the end of the day, we don't want to wait until people are harmed. We want to be able to prevent that harm, mitigate harm. And it emphasizes healing, social support, and active accountability. Healing from harm is something that's very difficult for us really to think about in this context, but it's so important because so many people have been harmed as a result of the activities that we share in higher education. And so we just have to think about that. A restorative justice is a practice that's rooted in indigenous and religious traditions. And so it's very broadly practiced. This is not something new. This is about when you bring the family together to have a family meeting around the dining room table because the little brother stole the little sister's toy and everybody is crying and upset. So you bring the whole family together to try to deal with that harm that one person in the family has experienced. So these help then people actually figure out a way of how to deal with it. And so you'll see that the practices respond to harm by helping to clearly identify how was the person hurt? How was the person hurt? And then to figure out what the needs are of the community and solutions. And this is all done in an inclusive and collaborative decision-making process. So before I leave this, I wanted to just speak of an example of something that I saw recently and something that kind of, I think will speak to those of you who are in graduate school or involved in graduate education. Very often as a researcher, and I am a pharmaceutical scientist by training, we develop an idea of the way that we want our students to practice their craft, how we want them to interact in the lab, all of those kinds of things. But we usually come up with that in our own minds. And we don't always think about the culture, the background, or what kinds of experiences the students have already had before. And so you bring these people together from many different religious groups, ethnic groups, and all of those kinds of things. And I had a student once who actually came out as gay during the time he was in my research group. And it was something that he wanted to do in the group. It was something that was really important to him that the people in the community, which was his lab, would understand. It caused significant harm to another student who wasn't able to deal with it. She wasn't ready to deal with it. And it was about them caring so much about each other that we didn't actually foresee these things happening. So what did we have to do as a lab? We had to bring everybody together. We had to sit down. We had to talk about it. She came from a culture that had a very different perspective on homosexuality. And so we sat down and we talked about it together. Now she is one of his biggest supporters, and she has learned so much from that entire experience. So sometimes we just have to step back and think about what it is that harm can mean and what can we actually have to do to deal with it. So is indeed a process involving primary stakeholders in determining how best to repair the harm. So we bring everybody together. In higher education and graduate education, students, faculty, staff, and the community are all stakeholders. And that often happens, of course, when we think about especially those parts of our campus where graduate students are involved in community-based outreach. We have to be very cautious that the work that we do as a university community does not harm our community broadly. And so we have to think about bringing people together in that respect. So offenses that are really in higher education, we can very, very often talk about power differentials. And a big part there is that there are always power differentials in higher ed because there is someone who's giving grades, someone who's doing assessments, someone who's carrying out those things, and someone who is actually receiving it. So there's a power differential. There's a power differential in the PhD advisor, PhD student dynamic, and then across department chair, faculty member, all of those kinds of things. Harm in higher ed is specific to education, is academic harm. That's a whole nother topic that we can talk about that needs its own space, because when we talk about academic harm, when a professor walks into a classroom and has a certain idea about how a student is going to perform based on the first sentence that comes out of their mouth because they have an accent, there is already academic harm happening there. So we have to think about what does that look like. And then repairing it. Restorative practice and the restorative justice continuum are the ways that we can actually repair this harm. So this is a model that was fully developed in the K through 12 education space. And it was interesting to me when I started to look at restorative practices in education and look at this, I thought to myself, everyone who makes it into higher ed has somehow been educated through a K through 12 education model. You have to have a high school degree, or you have to have gotten some kind of degree and actually go to higher education. By the time you go into a PhD program, which is what I have mostly been thinking about, but this also applies to master's and undergraduate degrees, you have been through so many different models of education. And so one of the things that was really interesting here, and I want to draw your attention to the figure here, it shows spheres of influence. And that then is talking about the individual. And we see that there are three different areas here. One is the classroom, one is the campus, and one is the community. So you as an individual are influenced and influence what happens in the classroom, the community, and the campus. And you will notice that there are 4 Ps around each one of those: person, place, practice, and plan. So that's called the 4 Ps. And we'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. So what are some of these practices we talk about? We talk about community conferencing. Community conferencing is something that can happen for a large university at the university level, but can happen all the way down to a department, to the department level. You bring the community together and everybody sits down and talks about harm that has occurred based on any kind of activity that's negative or perceived as negative by a member of the community. Then you have circle processes, which are proactive dialogue and reentry circles. Those circles are really also very much like conferencing, but usually much smaller and dealing with a single incident. You have peer mediation. You have respect agreements. PhD programs love to use IDPs. And IDP is an individual development plan. That is actually an agreement very often between the advisor and the student. And that can be a very interesting place to actually talk about what things are going right, what things are going wrong, and to repair any harm that's been mitigated by in any individual one. Then there are restorative inquiries, and those restorative inquiries are ones where you're really seeking to find ways to repair. So the 4 Ps here, person, is the first one, and this is about the individual. And you'll notice I keep using that term individual. We have to think about the fact that all of these things, we often think about our experiences in higher education and graduate school and stuff. It's about the department did this or the college did this, or the program did this. Usually it's about individuals. And it's the way each individual interacts with others in the community. Somebody needs to mute. Let's see. Thank you. And how that interaction has an impact on relationships. And place, the environmental conditions or campus climate, and the factors that affect how individuals interact with one another. So one thing that we think about when we think about a place, you will note that in higher ed, we've had incidents where people have taken down statues or changed the names of buildings and things like that, because they felt that students felt, people that in the community felt that it was harmful to them to have to go and sit in a room that was named after someone that had mitigated harm against people that they identify with. So that's some of the things you think about place. Practice opportunities to prevent conflict, resolve challenges, and create changes. I think I got it. For relationships to grow. And then plan, you have to have a plan. An institutional plan for making restorative practice is a part of institutional culture. Most higher ed institutions don't have that plan. Many K through 12 institutions try to do that, but in higher ed, we usually don't do that. And we see some of the fallout of that in institutions where we've had major issues with sexual violence and things like that, that there is no real plan in order to mitigate the harm to the community. So why inclusive excellence? This act of establishing hallmarks of excellence. Why is that? That's because of this. If you incorporate inclusive excellence into graduate education, then you actually have a process by which everyone who can and wants to has access to the resources and access to success. You actually then can create or maintain an institutional climate that includes everyone, that is equitable in its treatment of everyone, and people get along well. It's never going to be that everybody loves everyone. We know better than that. That's just not going to happen. But we have to get to a place where intergroup relationships do not harm people or don't cause people not to have access to the success that they deserve. Education and scholarship. In higher education, the more we can actually get access to all people, the better we're going to be educated and the better our scholarship is going to be. This can be incredibly important in elevating the excellence of an institution. And then institutional infrastructure. This is where we talk about creating a place where everybody can feel included, everybody can feel welcome. Walking across Wayne State's campus, I can sit here on my 11th floor window and look out and I can see a place that is welcoming to some, but not welcoming to all. And so we really have to think about what that looks like. And then of course, community engagement. When the institution, when graduate education itself has itself in a place where it can involve the community without mitigating harm, and within its community, then it's going to provide the excellence that's needed to uplift the institution. Why equity mindedness? So this again, I said the individual, personal and institutional responsibility is taken for success of all community members. That is so important for us to think about, because we have to not think about giving everybody equal resources. We have to think about giving people equitable resources. And this is a point that is really not well practiced very often within higher ed, and something that in graduate education we really have to think about, because we bring students in for doctoral degrees and not everybody is coming from the same place, not everybody's coming with the same resources, not everybody's coming with the same background or the same academic background, even in that respect. So then we have to think about the equity involved in that. We need to look at institutional and personal practices and make sure that we create the change that's needed for equity. So is it reasonable that the way that we use leave of absence policies? So that's when we start talking about practices. Are those practices equitable? Within my own research group, I have to look at, am I treating my female and male students the same way, in the fact that I know from an equity standpoint that my female students are the caregivers in their families. That just happens to be in my lab. That's not always the case. And so do I have to deal with that? And how do I deal with that when I'm dealing with my own students? You want to require consciousness of difference and awareness of the social and historical context of exclusionary practices in American higher education. So that is the big piece. If we don't take into context the fact that students who come into our university, into graduate education, are coming from, domestic students are coming from a historical context that has very exclusionary practices. When we think about students coming from abroad and coming into the United States, we have to think about the context of the history that they come from with our country. So there's a lot of different things that we have to think about when it comes to equity in that space. And then we have to question our assumptions and recognize stereotypes that limit success. And all of those things come together then to help us explain to ourselves why we see inequities in outcomes. Because remember, in the end, this is about success. It's about trying to figure out why we are seeing students who are performing at different levels. So let's just talk about this for a second. And this is where I kind of want you guys to help me. And I have my screen set so I can actually see people. So if you want to come on camera and talk to me, that would be great too. But one of the things that I found, and as I said, I'm a pharmaceutical scientist, is that professional norms have a huge impact on the diversity, equity, and inclusion in various disciplines. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that higher education, especially at the doctoral level, is all about professional preparation. It's about preparing to become a member of a certain group, right? So that's kind of what you want. And that group is your professional group. Okay, so if we talk about then professional norms, and I have in the biomedical sciences down here, I usually do this just to give people a feeling for, let's see if I can get back to my slide, who is represented. So if you think about your profession, I'm going to ask everybody to think for a second, who appears in front of your face when you think about your profession? Who is the model for your profession? So that's the question. If you think of physicists very often will think of Einstein because he was a very, very well-known person in that profession. So who wants to share with me? Anybody want to share with me? Who is the person that you think of when you think of your profession? I know you guys aren't scared to talk. Don't make me start calling names because I can see all your names on here. I see Angela. She just came on video. Hi, Angela. It's good to see you.
Hi, good to see you too. I think in genetic counseling, when I think about what the profession looks like, it's primarily white women, and it started out as white women whose children were off to college and who had resources and who decided they wanted a second profession. So it wasn't about money. It was about trying to develop a second job after having raised children for years. But it has limited, I think, how diverse our profession is now, which is not very diverse, because that's where it started. And that was the perspective that led to developing the culture of the profession, which is genetic counseling.
Wow, Angela, you hit the nail on the head in a very important way there. You talked about a certain group of people who have framed your profession. As a chemist, for me, if I think about who's framed my profession, it's white men, of course, because for many, many years, that's who was actually important there. So the question becomes then, when you think of professional norms, Angela, do you think that you need to function the way those women do, who are the ones who are the persona of your profession?
I don't, and I think that we've moved away from that perspective, but it's still, I mean, the code of ethics was developed based on that perspective, and even though it's changed, I don't know that it's changed significantly enough. The idea that this was like a second job and that that income wasn't needed definitely does not speak to the people currently going into the profession, but in some respects, it still drives salaries and our ability to actually negotiate for a living wage. So there's a lot of factors that are still impacted by that history, even though it doesn't necessarily represent the current people in the profession. It still is primarily female.
Very true. Thank you, Angela. I would love to hear from someone else. And if you don't necessarily want to come on camera, that's fine. You can just talk to me. Anybody else?
This is Tamika Merriman. I'll talk.
Thank you, Tamika.
So I currently work in foster care as a program manager, and our field, the social work field or foster care field, is mainly dominated by women. I can't necessarily say dominated by African American women, but definitely not a lot of male presence at all. And I will agree with the other speaker that we're fighting for, proper salaries and things like that, but it's definitely women driven.
Wow, that's very interesting too. Thank you. So just thinking about how there is a professional norm here that's created by a group of people. That's exactly what the two people who shared told us about. It's really about that. And so That happens in all of our professions. And so it is not for it's for a good reason that the professions remain predominantly female in these cases, because there's still that history, there's still that thinking. And so I'm just going to share the photos that I have here on the biomedical science. So that's the famous Watson and Crick, who invented, of course, or recognized the DNA double helix. And then this is, oh God, what's his name? It just ran away from me. Carl Jurassic. He's one of the most important persons in steroids. So he was for a long time seen as one of the most important persons in biomedical science. That's Rosalind Franklin, who was the woman who was actually not identified in the discovery of the double helix until much later. And then there's this African-American man that most people don't know, and that's Charles Drew. And so we know, Percy Julian, I said it wrong. We know that these people are a part of the biomedical sciences enterprise, but there is a persona out there that is always going to be driving what the profession looks like. So when PhD students come into the profession, very often they're coming into the profession thinking that they have to emulate those individuals that have actually been the ones who historically have guided it. So if you think about those things, very often we have committees that sit down and make decisions about what graduate students come into a program. Those folks are guided by that professional norm that they've been indoctrinated with. And then they think that the characteristics that need to come into a new doctoral student are the ones that they've always heard. And so if we think about it, and I think I got this, this group of words is actually from a specific profession, but I don't remember off the top of my head. We expect PhD students to have very specific characteristics. And I don't think we always understand that to be true, but it is. We want them to be personable. We want them to be academic. We want them to be confident. We don't want them to be unfocused. That it should be focused. We want them to be creative. We want them to have rigor, all of those kinds of things. So these are some of the characteristics that we have for new PhD students. If we talk to many of the students out there who want to be in our PhD programs, they don't feel like they fit. They don't feel like they fit. And so that's when we talk about them not feeling included. And a lot of those folks are from diverse backgrounds. So that's part of what our issue is in higher education. And if we take a restorative approach to trying to deal with this, then what we would do is reframe the professional norms in a way, reframe them to include, especially for a campus like Wayne State, reframe it to show what's important to this institution, what's important to the researchers at the institution, reframe it around what we hold as dear. And we would do that by talking to each other, building community, building strong communities that actually people will want to join and that people feel comfortable in. And believe it or not, I believe that all of those things would bring us to a point of excellence. And I think that's really important to think about. So the last slide I have before the very end here, I wanted to show one of our graduate students. And this is Erin Edwards. I don't know if anybody knows her. She's highlighted on the grad school's website, and she's in translational neuroscience. And showing the people that we show, actually making sure that we show representation like this young woman who is happy in this picture, at least we don't know, but she looks like she's happy. And she is a graduate student. That tells other people the same thing. So representation really does matter. So that's the other piece that I wanted to bring up here. So the last slide actually shows you a graphic of the model, which is, like I said, was designed specifically for Wayne State University. It's built on a foundation of equity mindedness, which means it's built on a foundation of individuals who believe that it is important to treat people in an equitable way so that they have access to success. It is also built on a foundation of restorative justice, which helps us to get to all of these places of access, institutional climate, education, scholarship, institutional infrastructure, and community engagement, which is all a part of inclusive excellence. And so that then is what covers, or what is the epitome of what Wayne State University is offering as graduate education. I can say that because I'm the dean of the graduate school. This is what I actually preach to my folks in my office. And I believe I've extended that also to many of the graduate program directors that I work with, who are actually the people who make sure that graduate education at the institution works. So that is all I have as far as presenting is concerned. And I believe now we're going to go into our panel discussion. If I'm
Yes.
Yes.
I will add our speakers here. And so we have Stephanie Hawks and we have Raymond Mohammed, who are going to join us here. Dr. Amanda, I'll let you kind of take away the introductions and start the questions here. And thank you very much for that presentation. I think that's a good overview of a pretty complex concept, and I guess more than a concept, but entire way of thinking. So go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Nick. So I'm going to ask Raymond and Stephanie to introduce themselves. They can do a much better job than I can. And I'll ask Stephanie to go first.
All right, thank you for having me. Thank you for being with us this afternoon and for that presentation. So I'm Dr. Stephanie Hawks. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the interim director for the Office of Multicultural Student Engagement here at Wayne State. I've been at Wayne for 6 years now, and with the office for 3. And so my background, my educational background is that of education. So I'm an educator by trade. I have all 3 degrees focused on education. And so I still consider myself a lifelong learner and educator, regardless of what kind of roles I found myself in over these past 10 years. So, quick.
Thank you, Stephanie. Raymond?
Sure. So thank you much for having me here this afternoon. I'm Raymond Mohammed. I'm the chair of the Department of Urban Studies and Planning. I came to urban planning through a very circuitous route. I started off as an engineer. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. I had a working experience. I don't want to, I guess I should say that I don't want to take up too much time, but I worked for the Carter Center after I finished my bachelor's degree in civil engineering. And I should have learned then that I no longer wanted to be an engineer, but I was foolish, didn't quite internalize the lesson. So I went back for a master's degree in environmental engineering. And then I worked for the Carter Center again a second time. And that's when I realized I really didn't want to be an engineer. I wanted to be something different. And urban planning is not a field that many people know about. It's even in our program, students that we have, so they kind of stumble across this thing called urban planning. And same for me, I stumbled across urban planning and learned about its things that we were trying to do at the Carter Center. For example, community engagement, community participation, grassroots-led economic and community development. I was stunned to learn that these things actually have an academic background. These things that we were trying to do on the ground actually came out of academic literature, much of it from the urban planning literature. And so I decided I had to do urban planning. Long story, that's how I became an urban planner. And the reason why it's very, very pertinent to the discussion that we're having today, and I'm pretty sure that all of us from all of our different backgrounds, well, certainly some of us thinking that what we do is the most important thing in terms of DEI and restorative justice, and urban planners think the same thing too, right? What we do is the most important thing in the world is with regard to DEI and restorative justice. But I think we do have some claim to that. So for example, when Amanda was asking, whom do we think of when we think of our field? I hadn't thought about that before, at least I haven't thought about it in a long time. What I think of is a mass of people, because urban planning is not about personalities or a person, but it's about communities of people. So what comes to mind is a downtown, a thriving downtown with, you've seen the pictures, right? Every time somebody proposes a redevelopment of downtown, there's an image with a nice shiny buildings and mostly unrecognizable faces of people. And I think I hadn't quite thought about this until Amanda mentioned it, but to me, that's an advantage. We just think of a mass of people. Very frequently, also, we think of empty green landscapes because that's the canvas upon which we frequently work in as urban planners. So I am going to stop there. I think that was enough already for now. I'll stop there and I'll be happy to
Thanks,
continue the
Raymond.
conversation.
Thank you, thank you. So we want to just have a discussion a little bit around restorative inclusive excellence and what it means in the graduate education space. And I know that Dr. Stephanie has just gone through graduate education here at Wayne State. She got her PhD here. And one of the things that I would like for her to speak to is, are there points in the process that you would consider harmful?
Thank you for that. So, yes, I raised my eyebrows at harmful because, you know, I think the ways in which you talked about the norms of a profession and the norms of being a graduate student, I think those are just the norms of the process. And I remember even applying, you know, for a graduate program in and of itself is daunting because there's multiple layers in which you feel that you're being judged, evaluated, and you don't necessarily understand what those things are. So I'm a first generation college student. I'm from Detroit Public Schools. I grew up on the east side of Detroit. And I'm the first in my family to do any of these levels of education. And so when I decided to pursue a doctorate, I knew that, you know, there would be an application. There are certain testing standards that some programs adhere to and others don't. But it was something that from the very beginning, I think was something that concerned me was, you know, in what ways am I going to be evaluated? Is it fair? You know, this is a representation of me on paper from some person that I don't know and who doesn't know me. Is going to make some sort of determination on whether or not I'm quality enough for this journey. So I think even from the very beginning of that process, yes, it's harmful. Just because in a lot of ways, I think the admissions process in and of itself, I think is a norm and a culture and a tradition that there's like this kind of secret way that you get invited to this program, right? You don't know. Some people I know had to go through an interview process, some people didn't. And I think that was their way of trying to be equitable, to your point. But in some ways, you know, knowing that some people had to go through an interview and other people didn't, there's assumptions made there, and there's some perhaps some opportunities for some harm there, you know, and thinking about what one approach may be, you know, trying to be equitable and holistic can also present some other unique issues on the students receiving end. And then I think even the whole, you know, you go through classes, and I think classes, depending on the types of instructors and the content in your courses, those can be harmful. I've had situations in classes that were harmful. But I think the part at the end of like writing and the relationship you form or don't form with your chair, because so much of a dissertation does rely on some of that connection and relationship building that you have with the faculty member that's your chair. And thinking about the people who were in my cohort, the people who finished first, or the people who were further along in their process, I think, you know, you could have some reflection on what kinds of relationships or how open their chair was to pushing them along or checking in on them, or whether or not they did those things at all. So yeah, I think institutions of higher learning were not necessarily designed to be inclusive, certainly not on the end of a terminal degree. I think they're supposed to be, I don't agree with this, but they're supposed to be prestigious because of the level in which you had to, prove your worthiness and do all this independent work to then, have this title. So I think they're inherently, the process is inherently harmful, but as, depending on the different types of identities that you hold, so I identify as a Black woman, the ways in which you experience those situations, those circumstances, they may impact people differently based on the identities that they hold. So, and in some regards, having gone through 2 degrees already, you've got some experience to help bolster you and get you through some of those things, but there are other circumstances in which there's no way that you could have been prepared to deal with those types of things. So that's all I'll say on that.
Thank you, Stephanie. That's very good to hear you speak so clearly about the experience. It's also you talked about the relationships and we talk about a lot. I mention individuals a lot when I talk about that. And almost everything that you said has to do with the interactions between 2 people, a relationship that happens between the chair of your dissertation committee and you as a student and things like that. So I'm going to ask Raymond now to talk to me about how within a department, you can help students feel that they can be included, even if they don't look like the professional norm.
Sure. I did want to respond to one thing Stephanie said. I'm not sure if you all have been following the news or been reading about this in the newspapers, but there have been a few articles and studies recently, and perhaps some of you know about this, the percentage of professors whose parents have a PhD or some other advanced professional degree is surprisingly large. I was stunned. I assumed that was not the case. I never thought about it before, but it so turns out that having a parent who has a PhD is an enormous advantage to knowing how to navigate this entire system. Simple example is in economics, for example. To get a PhD in economics, you don't need an undergraduate degree in economics. In fact, it's probably a bad idea to have an undergraduate degree in economics. What you need is a series of math courses. And you need to have a parent to know that, or else if you think you want to do a PhD in economics, the natural thing to do is to think you need an undergraduate degree, and that's not the case. So anyway, I wanted to mention that because that's I think it just highlights how knowing the system is very important. Directly in response to Dean Amanda's comment, and partially in response to something Stephanie said also, we interview all our students, and we do that precisely, that is all our students, precisely because, or one reason is, precisely because we don't want to leave the impression that some people have an advantage over others. So I talk to anybody who's interested in the Master's of Urban Planning program, and I've got a rough script of what I go through, and I'm sure to mention the same thing to everybody so that people are on the same page about what the program is about and what we're looking for in terms of students. I think in terms of making everybody feel included and are a part of the profession, I think we really have to go back to, in our case, our curricula. Our curricula really is admittedly evolved over many decades, broadly speaking, focused on DEI and restorative justice. So just about anything we do in the curricula these days is framed in that context. A good example would be environmental planning. So when we think of environmental planning, we first of all start off by recognizing that minority communities have borne the brunt of environmental injustices across the nation. It's a fact. And again, Amanda, would you mind if I share my screen for 1 second? I don't have PowerPoints, but I do have a wonderful article in New York Times from yesterday that I can share with you. Really just came out yesterday. Don't know if any of you have ever heard of this person, but his name is Robert Bullard. He's a professor at Texas Southern, and for decades now, he's been talking about environmental injustice, and his work has informed a lot of what we teach in urban planning at the graduate level and also at the undergraduate level. It so turns out that part of recent legislation with regard to Build Back Better and its new forms, etc., devotes lots of money to correcting environmental injustices that have taken place and have been identified and has become part of policymaking largely because of this guy. I'm going to stop that share. But the point is that everything we do in urban planning, whether today or for many years now, has been centered on thinking about how to correct historical harms through restorative means, whether it's environmental planning or community development or neighborhood revitalization, or more broadly speaking, how we use land, is a way that not just our program at Wayne State, but urban planning as a field broadly brings. It's a lens that urban planning brings toward addressing issues of restorative justice and being proactive and ensuring that students in the classroom are aware of it. We create a culture of thinking about it, and students leave the program with that sense of the need to repair injustices of the past that urban planners have themselves been a part of. So I kind of realized I didn't quite answer Amanda's question about how the program deals with it, but I think the point I'm getting at is that we deal with it in a holistic way directly through the curricula.
I think that is a beautiful way of actually explaining an approach to making students who may not feel that they fit the norm of the profession understand that they are included, simply because of the fact that you're teaching things that they relate to broadly. So that's a great answer, Raymond. Thank you. So Stephanie, I'm going to ask you about restorative and restoration. So I started thinking about restorative practices in higher ed about 2 years ago. And one of the first things that I heard was people talking about reparations, right? So if we don't include reparations in the conversation, what is the way that you can actually see graduate education becoming more restorative into our communities, to all of our communities?
That's a good question. I think it's an important question right now, because in what we're seeing right now in terms of trends and societal views of education, I think we're seeing a shift towards devaluing education as a public good. And so I think we're at an important moment where we're having conversations about access, to your point earlier. So access in terms of financial access to higher education, literal access in terms of how applicants are selected and admitted to universities. So the pandemic, we saw a huge shift where institutions didn't have standardized test requirements, right? Partly because of necessity. They weren't proctoring exams, but also, there was always the equity question of what are standardized tests actually measuring, and whether or not that's a necessary metric to determine admission. So I think in terms of reparations in graduate education, I think as a society, in some ways, I think, education has become politicized in a way that it's like weaponized now. So it's almost as if you're, if you're too educated, you're drinking the Kool-Aid, and now, students are being indoctrinated into schools of thought, and so I don't know if I can answer that, because I feel like we're in a moment where education, again, is going through a shift, and up until the Reagan eras, we saw, overall an investment in higher education, right? State and federal appropriations to higher education was there. That's why we have a lot of baby boomer age people saying, well, I paid my way through college. And that's because the government paid for you to be there too. And so as we've seen, funding shrink and shrink, I think the question is, how much do we value education as a society? And I think what is this? The Gen Z? No, what are we on? I don't know. The younger people, I forget the generation name.
Aren't they Gen Zs? I think
Are they
so.
Z?
I think so.
Okay, well, yes, okay.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Fact checker, Nick. Gen Z, yes, is currently in college. We're seeing a decline in 18-year-olds. We're seeing a decline in young people. But I mean, personally, yes, I think education is a great tool for social mobility, for breaking cycles of poverty, but only if it's valued. And, the larger conversation of, Biden's student loan debt forgiveness, right? If we're putting marginalized people in deep holes of debt to try to reach these degrees, like, how much are we really helping them? So they may have taken a step forward in terms of educational advancement, but financially speaking, they're stunted in terms of being able to grow and build generational wealth to then pass on to future generations. So I don't know, it's a hard question. I don't even know if I answered it, but I think to the question, I have more questions of, how as a society are we valuing education, to some of the people's points in terms of what they envision in terms of the people in their field, the fact that we have people with advanced degrees fighting for living wages is problematic. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Stephanie. I know it was a hard question. I have no answer myself, but I definitely wanted to hear your perspective on that very, very much. So I'm going to talk to you now, Raymond, about equity. The equity mindedness concept is an important one. Raymond, can you hear me?
Oh, yep.
Okay, sorry. So the equity mindedness concept is an important one, and you are a department chair. And so when you think about equity in bringing in students, and I know you have a large master's program, what is it that you think that you can do to give everybody what they need to be successful? What does that look like for you?
Sure. Before I answer that question with regard to the the generational part of it, it is indeed Gen Z, and I know that because many people think of me as being Gen Z. That's a joke. But anyway, how we think about equity in our department with regard to students are twofold that I can think of. Maybe there's a third way depending on how I articulate this. The first is scholarships. So we have some scholarship money, including some from the graduate skill, and we have made a determined effort to be sure that we distribute our scholarship money, whether they're small pots of money or larger pots of money, in ways that are beneficial to students who might otherwise not be able to join the program because of a lack of money. Now, for sure, it doesn't pay their entire way here, but it could make a big difference for students who otherwise might not be able to join the program. And I really want to emphasize that point. Scholarship money for students whose parents are not professionals. Many of them live stressed lives. Many of them live in disadvantaged neighborhoods. They're taking care of parents in some cases. They're taking care of kids in some cases. They're holding down another job well, frequently they're holding down a job or 2 jobs while they're coming to graduate school. It's really important to provide them with financial resources. And it's not just obviously the material act of providing financial resources is important, but the signal that these students get that somebody thinks about them, somebody's thinking about these issues, and somebody cares enough about it to direct resources to them. I think just that signal in itself is really important. That's one comment. A second comment is, and like many graduate programs, there could be a struggle with graduating students who are underrepresented, who have a hard time meeting the demands of taking care of parents and kids and everything else and coming to grad school at the same time. And we've made a concerted effort to reach out to students whom we believe face additional difficulties with managing both life and school, and seeing them through the program. It really is a very hands-on, somewhat intense exercise of constantly reaching out to students and being in touch with them. So we've got a somewhat strange grad program, I think, in one regard. It's a master's degree, by the way, right? It's a professional master's degree, but everybody gets an advisor, and it's not a staff advisor. Everybody gets a faculty advisor, one of us who stays in touch with them throughout the program. Now, of course, there could be challenges there. Students may not respond, students fall off the grid, etc. But we make a concerted effort to reach out to all of our students, each professor, all of our advisees during the semester, and say, please check in. And that simple act of encouraging students to check in, asking how they're doing, how could we help to make life easy for them. Again, it's in itself, it's important, but sending that signal to students that you care about them, that you want them to graduate, and you want them to be successful is just a very important thing to do. Likewise, when it comes to the professional job market. So again, professional program, we get lots of emails from alums saying, we need a new person in our team. Could you help us find somebody who can join us? And when we get those emails, again, making a concerted effort to ensure that we advertise them to everybody, of course, but helping students who might otherwise not feel like they're in a position or have the wherewithal to respond to these job ads and apply to these job ads, encouraging them, letting them know they've got the skills like everybody else has. They've gone through the program, or they are going through the program. They've taken the classes. They're as capable as anybody else of doing the job, and directing them, encouraging them, helping see them through that process of applying and successfully obtaining jobs is really important. So again, I keep on losing track of the question, Amanda, but I think those are two main ways in which we try to practice equity within the program. And I could add another point, but I'm going to stop there. And if you come back to me later on, I'll try to squeeze it in.
You explained equity in a beautiful way, actually, in the way you talked about what you do. You talked about finances, but you also talked about opportunities, making sure that everyone was able to take advantage of opportunities that are offered. And sometimes I've noticed in higher education, we forget that part, because we have these, I hate the old boys clubs very often. Make sure that the opportunities are open to certain groups and not to others, or are actually given to some certain groups and not others. And so that's when we really get into equity issues. And in my area, that's a big issue. And I see a lot of that. And without having people who recognize inequity and outcomes, or people who are equity minded in that decision-making process, nothing changes. But you can often see, even in situations where you want to diversify the students in the program. Just by having someone who's truly equity minded, they're thinking about who are we actually offering opportunities to. You can see an increase in the diversity of people who get to move on to excellent graduate programs, career placements, and all that kind of stuff. So it's an important, you hit on something that not very many people think about. Well, I think that at this point, maybe it's a good time for us to open the floor for questions. I think that we have started to really get people to think about now what we're talking about when we're talking about restoration, we're talking about inclusion, we're talking about equity. And so we would really love to be able to answer your questions. Raymond and Stephanie have done a great job of really introducing from their own perspectives what this means in the context of where they sit in higher education. So please, if there are any questions, just raise your hand and we'll call on you.
And Stephanie and Raymond, if you'd like to stay on the panel here, I'll keep you spotlighted here. Anybody with any questions, please feel free to come off mute and ask away.
No questions? What's wrong?
Oh, we did get a hand raised from Alex. All right.
Hi, everyone. Alex Bosch, he, him, his pronouns. I have a question for Amanda and anyone else in the panel too. I'm curious, because you were talking about this, how you espouse in your college, and how do you espouse this and invite people into it, especially when individuals may not believe there's anything that needs to be restored. And so that tension there in your position as a leader, I'd really love to learn from.
That's been one of the most interesting parts of all of this. And I'm glad you recognize that. Very often people, when you start to talk about harm, I've found that the best way to get people to understand harm is to bring people together in community building circles and talk about their own experience. I have not had a circle yet that not every person could point to some kind of harm that they've experienced in the process of getting to where they are. And this goes to the highest level of the institution, because none of us are ever can escape harm. And this is something also that really is not based on socioeconomics, race, gender, or anything, because everyone has had some point in their experience where they feel like they were not treated fairly or something like that. And just getting people to talk about it has made people really understand, oh, yeah, this is something we really need to think about. Bullying in higher ed is a big issue. And so that's the one thing that I hear the most often. White men, older white men who have years of success behind them, talk about those incidences of bullying, and actually trying to think of ways to mitigate that harm from happening to younger folks coming behind them has become something that's really important to them. So it's a lot about individual self-actualization and understanding of where those things have occurred. Why did I have to go through all of this to get to where I am now is some of the things that some people start to think about. And that's been really helpful. Thank you, Alex.
So I guess I can go ahead and ask my question. So I have a spouse who is going through a doctorate program right now. And, as a minority in higher education, I know she has definitely faced some of these same issues that you all have talked about. And I really liked what Raymond said in terms of kind of addressing that and preventing it. But I guess my question is how, what's something that students can do from their end when they are put in that situation, if anything? I know we talk a lot about this from the faculty angle, from the, for me, I'm a part-time faculty. I teach a digital marketing course in the business school, and Oh, it's definitely Gen Z that's that are current students, but I do know that a lot of graduate students, they are in this this position of a disadvantage, and I'm curious as to what they can do, if anything, when they're at this point.
Raymond, you want to tackle that, Stephanie?
Oh, either one.
I'm gonna let Stephanie go. I don't have a good
Oh.
answer for that one.
So I was gonna say, I think you can approach this from multiple ways, and I didn't talk about this earlier on, but the peer network. So, if there's a cohort model or, peers who are sort of, you've seen them and you know who they are. I think peers are also a network that is tremendously valuable in the doctoral journey, or any journey really. Peer support is key. And so just having people to talk to about what you're experiencing, seeking, not that you need validation for your feelings are valid, but being able to have sounding boards and people to just hear you out is tremendously valuable. And thinking back to some of my experiences, it was because of my peers that I was able to get through situations, figure out a solution, and move on. The other thing I think is, throughout anyone's academic journey, there's multiple points in which you develop a stronger voice. And so depending on where someone is on that journey, the comfort level that person has with speaking out is important. And I'll say that that's something that I didn't actually develop until my doctorate. In terms of having negative or adverse experiences in classes or in situations, I didn't voice those seriously until I was in a doctoral program. And so I would say, depending on what the situation is, talking with their chair, talking with the department head or the dean or whatever the structure is of that program, is important. And I think that, the cohort model that we went through was the first kind of revitalization of the program here at Wayne. And we were very vocal about what wasn't working, what was not good, what was fine, and what they needed to change. And I know between me and my other friend, who I would say was kind of my accountability buddy throughout my doctoral journey, I knew that I would feel better if I said something versus being silent about it. And then that being another person's experience. If I can help someone else to, Amanda's point earlier about the bullying, if I can help someone else not have that experience, I feel good about that. So
I love what you said about peers, because one of the things that I have seen as in the role as dean of the graduate school is that students can come together, not in an official capacity, but really unofficially, and have conversations that cause us to listen and change structure, change practices, all of those kinds of things. And that's what works. When you change structures and practices, then you mitigate harm much more effectively than just dealing with one incident. So that's been really great. I think, is it Tamika? Because I remember you saying your name. Is it Tamika?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's probably T. Merriman, but it's Tamika.
Hey, Tamika, what's your question?
So my question is for, I think the gentleman was talking about scholarships and stuff like that. So I too am a first generation graduate student, just finished a master's degree. And at one point I was contemplating graduate school or a PhD, but financially it just doesn't make sense for me. I'm so in debt with student loans just from, the bachelor's and the master's degree that I just would never, ever get out of the hole. So for people like me who may be interested, but I have a family, I have to work. I have to, I have bills, I have current student loans. What would you suggest for someone like me who may be interested, but financially it just doesn't make sense? And even with the scholarship, having even some tuition to cover just may not be feasible.
Well, one thing that I will say about Wayne State, and this is the reason why 2 years ago I decided to come here, we can make a way out of no way. That's what we do here. And so when you're talking about, I hear your situation, and I hear your situation often. You want to get a PhD, you can't stop working, you've got to do other things. Our faculty are accessible themselves. So if you go to faculty members and you say, I want to get my PhD, this is my situation, can you help me find my way through it? there will be someone who will help you. What degree area are you interested in, Tamika?
So I was thinking more of a maybe something with social work. Maybe I just finished the Master's of Social Work program, so continuing on that path, if not more of a counseling PsyD maybe or something.
Mhm. Yeah, then you definitely need to come and talk to people on campus. Go to your social work, the program, go to our social work program here, talk to them about your aspirations. And there will be people who will help you find a way to do it. And if they can't help you find a way, then, you know, they always send you over here to Dr. Amanda's office because they know I make a way out of no way. That's what I do. So you just make sure, don't give up on your dream. It's a lot. It will take you time because you have a family and all of that kind of stuff, but we can find a way to make it happen for you. You may not do it the traditional way. You'll be like Raymond, who didn't go directly to urban planning like a lot of people have, but very few of us have that traditional path. So just stay in touch with the university. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Barbara, I see your hand as well.
Yes, I'm in the car. Hi, everyone. Thank you for presenting this. I just have a couple of questions as it relates to the restoration aspect of this discussion. And my question and my concerns are if educators are, how should I say this? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. If educators don't have the training to operate in a restorative manner, especially on the hierarchy aspects. And I see that every aspect of the graduation of the graduate school, students, potential students, touch many people before they actually get into the program. I'm dealing with a conflict on a potential graduate student in my department who asked questions of the graduate school and they weren't treated with dignity and respect. And that's the first person that a student touches as it relates to that inquiry. So how do we, as a university, teach our staff, our faculty, our advisors to operate in this restorative mindset? That's an issue. So I would just like more of everyone's insight on this because it takes multiple people to deal with this restoratively. Thank you.
It's a wonderful question, Barbara. And I am very disappointed to hear that someone on my staff treated someone without respect. So you and I have to have a conversation about that because I need to know what to do about that. But one of the things is training. And I hate to say training to people who have PhDs and all these big heads and degrees and all that kind of stuff, but people need to learn. And being restorative in your attitude, being equity minded and stuff, it's not something that comes natural to most of us. It's something that we do have to learn. And Alex actually, who is on the call here, is a person who was hired by the university to train people in not restorative justice. I'm not going to put that on him, but in a lot of different aspects like microaggressions and things like that. The university understands that training is needed. One of the things that I did very early on when I started to try to understand restorative practices was to develop modules very specific for educating people from the perspective of where they are. So one module is strictly for people who provide support to people who are graduate students. So graduate program directors or people who work in financial aid or things like that, because you don't want to know how many times I've heard about people who have experienced harm in the financial aspect of graduate education. And so there are things that we just need to think about and talk about. It's a new concept, so it's really kind of difficult to put it all together into a way that people can digest it quickly. So it's going to be that kind of training, that kind of exposure, that kind of education that's going to have to be taken in bite-sized pieces by everyone. And then eventually the community comes to understand it more. I see we can't also do it all the same way for every group. We see that even from the professional norm standpoint. I found that when I was working with search committees, for instance, a search committee in nursing is very different than a search committee that's functioning in physics. We have to talk to those groups in a different way to understand the different things that are happening there. So it's really about education and exposure and training, because very often, if you come from a culture, a background, a direction where you haven't experienced some of these things where inclusion becomes an issue or equity is an issue, you don't know. And that's okay, but you have to be open-minded to actually dealing with it. And we have to be ready to work with people and make sure there are consequences when people don't actually function in a restorative way. So those are some of the things that I'm giving a lot of thought to. It's a work in progress, Barbara. So if you have any ideas, I would love to hear them. Thank you. Any other, Nick, are you there? Yeah, you are. I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah, I am here. I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up. It is almost 4:30. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to speak with us today, for the questions and answers, for Dr. Amanda, for this really interesting, I guess, keynote. I keep calling it an I guess keynote because that's the best comparison.
Conversation, Nick, conversation.
Yes. For Stephanie and for Raymond for joining our panel today. This was our first time trying out an actual panel discussion in a professional development series event. So thank you so much. And with that, we'll wrap things up. Look for the email coming out to everybody with the video and survey, probably sometime tomorrow. And join us next week, next Tuesday afternoon. We'll have a session on how to be a great mentor. Our Associate Dean, Todd Leff, will be leading that discussion. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.